For 2 years, uh, in 2016 and 2017, Kenny Wiley ran a series in the UU World magazine that was a contest of sorts with brackets, like a March Madness sports thing. But the question was, what is the most UU thing? So instead of sports teams, the brackets were more than a dozen things like lighting the chalice or singing Spirit of Life. And both years it came down to those two as in the final heat. And both years, Spirit of Life lost to lighting the chalice. Lighting the chalice was considered the most UU thing. It was a bit of fun. This past year, in the spring, my colleague, Reverend Kimberly Debus, took that idea and focused in on just the hymns. The goal was to winnow it down to the top UU hymn for the year, and there were brackets and all of that, choices to be made. It was actually a fundraiser where each dollar was a vote for the hymn of your choice, and the money goes toward the development of a new hymn resource Kimberly is creating about our hymnal. I mention all of this to say that when people claim hymn number 123, Spirit of Life, to be the UU hymn, there's actually some empirical evidence to back this claim up. And, I'm sorry it's taken me this long to get around to my actual point, and the hymn is written as a prayer. We call on the Spirit of Life to influence our lives. That's what the hymn is saying. And it's interesting to me that this faith tradition of ours that can be a little wary around the topic of prayer loves this hymn so much. It's become our UU anthem. Now, the author of the hymn, Carolyn McDade, clarified in an interview to the UU World magazine that her aim was to write a personal prayer, not a denominational anthem. McDade said the circumstances surrounding the writing of that hymn began right after a Central American Solidarity meeting. It was just one of those social justice issues that McDade was working on in her life, and she was driving her friend Pat home after the meeting, and she explains in that interview, when I got to Pat's house, I told her, I feel like a piece of dried cardboard that has been laying in the attic for years. Just open the door wide and I'll be dust. I was tired, not with my community, but with the world. And she just sat with me. And I loved her for sitting with me. McDade then drove to her own home in Newtonville. I walked through my house in the dark, she writes. I found my piano, and that was my prayer. May I not drop out. It was not written, but prayed. I knew more than anything that I wanted to continue in faith with the movement. So it's a prayer. It was not meant to be a hymn, but a sung prayer. Spirit of Life, come unto me. Reverend Debus describes it as a request for support, for rest, for renewal, for perspective. Spirit of Life, come unto me. It's amazing to me that we have seen Unitarian Universalism, with its academic, heady focus and iconoclastic, anti-religious language bent, fall so utterly in love with this song, prayer. UU Binghamton is not the only congregation to sing this hymn most Sundays for well over a decade. So I started looking through our hymnal with an eye toward prayers. I, again, was amazed at how many of our hymns are also prayers. Bryn Taylor from our choir will sing a verse from one of these prayer hymns.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere.
There is more love. Number 95 in our hymnals. This hymn is hauntingly beautiful. It speaks of a longing for and a trust that there is something more. It's a lament. True, it doesn't specifically have the grammatical formula of a prayer. There's no deity named or holiness invoked, but this is definitely a prayer. It's an aching recognition that what is happening right now is not good. A change is needed, and a change can happen. It is a non-theistic prayer. There's a version of this hymn that offers a rewriting of one of the verses. Folk music does this a lot. The revision says there is more hope right here. It says we found it. We have hope. I'm gonna keep on because I've found it. This hope will carry us. And that small change turns the song from a lament into a song of praise, which is very different. Now, I don't know how many of you pray. Prayer, as I've said, is one of those practices we are a little shy about in Unitarian Universalism. Our clever skepticism can get in the way of such practice. But when you are having trouble, this hymn in its original lament form may be just the thing for you. It is an imploring that things get better. But it is still a stretch because it offers an affirmation, a trust that things can get better. There is more hope somewhere.
There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere.
About 3 years ago, Bryn and I co-led a service about music. It was about improvisation. It was about the exploration of how music heals our spirit. In that service, Bryn offered this wisdom. Bryn wrote, pitch, rhythm and meter, melodies and phrases, timbre, words and lyrics. These are all elements that make up music. Each one individually affects our emotions and our bodies in different ways. Each of these elements can have an emotional effect on a person, and through this emotional connection, you can find meaning. Music gets into our brains and into our awareness in a different way. Like Bryn was describing in that quote I offered, when we sing together or listen to music, our brains take in that sensory information differently than if the same words were simply spoken. Music connects us and integrates us. I remember a church musician telling me that we can sing things in the choir anthem that the congregation would never be comfortable hearing in a sermon. Our communal prayers are like that as well. A prayer is not a statement of theology. It's a way of communicating. that slips into us in a different way. And a sung prayer, ooh, a sung prayer is a special kind of power for us. Our next hymn is an old one. It can be found on probably in every Protestant hymnal in the country. It's a stirring piece about hope and faith and comfort and death. Our hymnal has 3 of the 8 verses from the original, and Becky Greenstrom from our choir will offer the first 2 verses of hymn 101, Abide with Me.
Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, still with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me.
I grew up Unitarian Universalist in a UU church that had a strong thread of humanism. And this hymn, for example, is not one that I remember hearing in church when I was young. Others of you, I'm sure, have rich memories of this hymn being sung. It comes out of the Christian tradition, and even the verses that we have in our hymnal still carry tones of that theology, yet it's muted enough to not be jarring, and for many of us it is familiar enough to still be comforting. I will add that I find it compelling that the text does not say, save me. It does not say, change this terrible situation I am in. Instead, it says, abide with me. Be with me. Be present to my suffering and my coming death.
Swift to its close ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me.
Our varied Unitarian Universalist theologies resonate with this way of facing death, this way of offering a prayer. We're not asking for there to be no sadness and no death. Instead, we're asking for the strength to face it and the presence of a holy companion that we be not alone at the end. In some ways, these prayer hymns gain some power for us simply by our familiarity with them. Abide with me is not as powerful for me because I have not had it in my life until just recently. What are the hymns for you that offer you comfort through both the sweet and sad memories you have associated with them? What are the hymns whose lyrics may not fit your theology anymore, but you're not willing to let go of how precious they are to you still? Perhaps over the years in our congregation, there are some hymns that show up in our services that have become true and comforting songs in your heart, and many of them are prayers. A bunch of them are not, of course, but perhaps a surprising number of them are prayers. Spirit of life, nearer, my God, to thee, all creatures of the earth and sky, amazing grace, though I may speak with bravest fire. Hush, hush over my head. I know I can go on. I know this this rose will open. Lift every voice and sing. How can I keep from singing? This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. And on the list goes. Our hymnal is filled with dozens of hymns of prayer. And maybe you're someone for whom prayer does not connect. It's not a practice you do. Maybe you are someone who does not sing and does not enjoy music in that way, but I know all of us at one point or another have been troubled, have needed guidance or support. Every one of us at some point along the way has wrestled in discernment about how to do the next right thing. For those times, perhaps one of our hymns may offer guidance and clarity, or simply a bit of solace. That's often enough. This last prayer song has been on my short list of favorites for a long time. You know, when I'm allowed to have more than one favorite. It's one that I find to be utterly beautiful in lyrics and in melody. Heather Sheridan will, from our choir, will sing hymn 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition, and when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Then, when the whole show is over, when my time is done, let it be for love. Let it be, O Spirit, love that shines through our last hours and indeed all our lives. Let it be love that lives on in a world without end. May it be so.